So I understand you installed a cold weather heat pump in
Yeah.
December or sometime this winter. What did you do to get ready for that, or how did you prepare?
Yeah, I did have a cold weather heat pump installed this December. And I did quite a lot of research and preparation beforehand. There weren't like a lot of local resources that were able to help. So a lot of it was sort of some self-education and honestly, even doing some experiments on my own house, which I'll get to in a moment. But one thing that is sort of important to emphasize is that, this is sort of a piece of a sequence. And I did start with weatherizing my house. I had a local contractor come in. They did an energy audit on my house. They did a blower door test, and we figured out how to like seal up some air leaks. And we added insulation in my attic. And actually, we had insulation in our crawl space, but apparently it was installed wrong. And so the team had to go underneath and like literally use some wire hangers to kind of push up the insulation so that it would actually be effective. So that was step one for me. I know that you don't want to put in a cold weather heat pump, but really any heating unit will be operating much less effectively if the home isn't really ready for it. You can waste a lot of energy. So that for me was step one. And then after I had taken some steps to make my house a little bit more energy efficient, I started to run some experiments on my house, and I was noticing that when my furnace would come on, it would run for like 5 minutes, maybe 9 minutes at a time. It's these real short little bursts. And I actually do have a graph which I can share here. Um, Let me know when you can see it, Jenna.
I can see it.
Great. But this was the sort of thing that I was seeing, where this is just kind of my hourly, every single hour. How long was it running? And it was just running for a few minutes every hour. Kind of
Oh,
would run a little bit longer at this time because it was usually sort of ramping up when I would wake up. But really, on the entire, uh, this is for a furnace actually in town basically from mid-December to mid-March. They're just seeing that on a daily basis, it's running for about 2 hours. On a really cold day, maybe getting to 4 hours. And this is sort of what is meant when people talk about a furnace being a chainsaw and kind of being this overpowered unit that you don't necessarily need all of the heat that it's capable of providing, and it's doing a lot of this cycling on off on off. And so I was looking at it and I was seeing, my house is operating in a way where I could have sort of a lower powered unit that runs much more efficiently, and I would be able to provide just as much heat as my house needs in order for me to be comfortable. And so actually, if I scroll down here, you can see what I've observed with my heat pump this year. The bars are a little bit higher, right? My runtime is longer. Rather than it being about 2 hours, my heat pump runs for about 6 hours every day. All of them are going a little bit longer, but even though it's running longer, it's using a lot less energy. Heat pumps are just incredibly efficient. They're not actually generating the heat energy; they're moving it, they're transferring it. So they use a fraction of the energy. And in fact, when I compare the energy that I'm using compared to the energy that this other home was using with a furnace, I'm using something like 50% less energy to be able to heat my home. And you can even see here that from the hours of 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock, there are no bars here. This was also very intentional because I knew that going on to electricity that it could be expensive if I were paying peak rates, right? So you can see that these orange bars, this is when the electricity on the grid is the cheapest. It's only 3 cents per kilowatt hour for me because I'm on a time of use rate. It's also the cleanest. So using energy at that time, I'm almost using my house like a battery. I put the heat into my home. I get it up to kind of a warm temperature. For us, it's like 67, 68 degrees. And then we coast for 5 hours during those peak pricing times. And I have not had to run my heat pump for even 1 minute during peak hours this entire winter. We've been able to coast. And that is what has been able to make it so that our family has actually even seen our bills come down because I'm using about I don't know, 33% of my energy, total energy, when the electricity is incredibly clean and incredibly cheap. And so this was sort of the experimentation that I was doing on my house, even before I had the heat pump. And you can actually see that's what this home is doing as well. They're kind of curious to see, well, what does that coasting look like? And so even though they have a furnace, they've been sort of putting some of that heat energy into their home. And then seeing what the coast is like. They do have a few bars, but that's largely because I didn't filter for weekends and holidays and things like that for this data set. But they've also been able to coast. And one thing that's also pretty exciting is that sometime in 2022, peak hours with APS is going to go from being a 5-hour window to a 3-hour window. And so, for us, we've been comfortable coasting. We will sometimes lose maybe 5 or 6 degrees over that period of time on a really cold day. It hasn't necessarily been like a stress to be able to coast for 5 hours, but once it's 3 hours, it could be kind of game changing to be able to just have to coast for 3 hours.
I love that you have this data. I'm the type of person who needs that. And Insider, he's been hounding us at the office for months, getting all our data too. But it's really interesting thinking about too that, people hear maybe a runtime of 6 hours and it sounds like they're using more. But really you're saying you're actually using less energy, even though it's running for more time. So
yeah, a lot less energy, honestly, when you do sort of the unit conversions, because electricity, they're talking about kilowatt hours, and natural gas, you're talking about therms. And so, I don't know, that'd be sort of like, I don't know, I spent €5 or 500 pesos. Who spent more money? Like, you got to put it in some sort of common denominator, right? And so if you take it to what's known as British thermal units, and see how much electricity was I using, or in British thermal units versus how much energy was being used in terms of British thermal units for therms, I really am using something like 50% less energy than a lot of the people that at least I've been able to see some of the data for.
It's wonderful. So how